everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Rage Room. Hey guys, I am your host Amanda, and this is my co-host Karen.
Hello everyone, and let's get dark.
Welcome back. How was your week?
My week was well. How was yours?
It was busy. I had a busy week this week.
Busy, but okay. Yeah.
So we are back with another true crime case, and this week Karen is taking on the lead with this one, so everybody get ready, because as we have shown in the past, she likes to pick the big cases. Pour you a cup of coffee if you're listening to this on a Saturday or Sunday morning, or grab you a beer if it's in the evening, because it's a long one.
This case can actually lead into so many different conversations, and you'll get what I mean when we get into it.
Okay.
So we're going to get into the case of Samuel Little. Have you ever heard of him?
Just from where you've thrown it around here recently. I haven't really done a lot of research.
Yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and dive in to Samuel Little.
Let's do it.
All right. So how do you pick the ones you're going to kill, asked Detective Bell. Well, the answer was, it depends on how their neck looked. Bizarre answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Detective Bell asked, did you have any conversation with her? And Samuel's answer was, my mind was on killing her. He said he chose his killings like plucking grapes off a vine. Pluck me another grape, he said, with a delighted chuckle. And how many grapes y'all got on the vine here? I mean, this guy was so blasé, about, and unremorseful about the things he did. I mean, it was just like just going in and plucking a grape to kill, That's what he thought of women.
Like most serial killers.
Pretty much.
Have no feeling, no whatever.
Right. Now, this all began in about 1970, when a woman's body was found strangled to death and buried in a shallow grave in Florida. And for the next, get this, 35 years, bodies would be found across different states without police having any connections to the murders and with absolutely no suspects. 35 years of killing.
That's a long time.
A very long time. The connection with these killings was actually Samuel Little, also known as Samuel McDowell, who after decades of killing became to be the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. He would later be known as the choke and stroke killer. I know, it sounds like a... right?
All I can think of is a big old diesel truck, souped-up truck.
Choke and stroke.
Choke and a stroke.
No, but you'll understand once we get into it.
Okay.
So Samuel Little was born on June 7th, 1940, in Reynolds, Georgia.
Okay.
Now that's a small town about 100 miles south of Atlanta, and back at that time had a population of about 1,000 people, so not a real big place. All right, and he was born to 16-year-old mother, Bessie Mae Little, and 19-year-old father, Paul McDowell, so very, very young parents. Some authorities believe he may have been born in jail because, as Little had actually claimed, his mother was a lady of the night, although her 1940 census listed her occupation as a maid. Okay.
Maybe she was a maid of the lady of the night.
It could have been, just a double dipper, maid by day, lady of the night.
She's getting that
by night.
retirement and that money.
I'm telling you.
Good for her.
All right. So not much is really told about Sam's father, other than he lived near the railroad tracks, assuming his father was not in his life. Sam was raised by his paternal grandmother, Fannie Mae McDowell, out on Macon Street in Lorain, Ohio.
Okay.
So what is it with serial killers making their stops in
Ohio?
What's the deal?
Because it's just flat.
I don't know if
you don't have to look very far for
you
your
have
next
to be,
victim. You just there's 100 miles down the road, and I can see them clear as day.
It's flat.
It's just flat.
Well, Sam claims he was abandoned soon after his mother gave birth to him, and that she just kind of left him on the side of a dirt road. Now, Sam attended Hawthorne Junior High School, where he had problems with discipline. All right, so this guy's got issues from a very young age.
Well, it sounds like he has authority issues from not having a decent father or a father-like figure in his life.
Right.
So immediately they have authoritative issues.
Exactly. There's childhood trauma with any of these serial killers, if you look back at all of them.
Right.
Sam's first crime was in the 1950s. As he later stated, he stole a bicycle, and he was sent to the Boys Industrial School, which was a reformatory for teenagers near Columbus, Ohio. Now, it had been reported by the time he left, like a year and a half later, that he had actually been in trouble 47 times and had disciplinary infractions, okay?
Okay. This is when he was younger?
Yes.
Okay.
So, reformatory, always getting in trouble, all kinds of discipline issues. Now, by the time Sam was 16, he actually dropped out of school and was drifting around the United States and was arrested for a burglary in Omaha, and then continued to go on in and out of reform schools and jails for various types of theft throughout his teen years, up until about the time he was in his 20s. So we've already got a good base of mischief.
Criminal
activity, yeah. Right. Now, an interesting and important note to remember here into the young mind of Sam Little is that Sam had a fetish with women's necks that was actually sparked when he was in kindergarten. He actually saw his kindergarten teacher just touch her neck, just like you may reach up and just touch your neck for whatever reason, and he was actually sexually aroused by it. Now, I don't really understand a kindergartner being sexually aroused at that age. I'm not so much buying that part of it, because there's others that report that when he was in school, he touched the neck of a teacher inappropriately, and this was his first lustful experience. So I'm assuming it was probably when he was a little older. And it
How
said,
do you touch a neck lustfully?
Well, he may have just kind of reached up and just caressed a teacher's neck, and it made her feel uncomfortable, I guess. I mean, it said he even collected, though, true crime magazines depicting women being choked. So this guy really had an issue or, fetish with a woman's neck. I mean, we've heard of other fetishes, feet and whatever, so...
Yeah, that's a new one for me. I've never heard of...
I like your neck.
I like your neck.
Like your neck. So, as Sam continued to travel across the United States, he was actually arrested for fraud, shoplifting, armed robbery, assault, DUI, rape, and other various crimes. Okay, so he's just this,
building his tally, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He started young, getting in trouble, and now he's kind of escalating things a little bit with the things that he does. This guy is always in trouble. So he had actually been, by 1975, he'd actually been arrested 25 times across 11 states. So he's already this transient as it is, from going from state to state. Sam served a total number of 10 years for his offenses. Now, 3 years in prison was spent for a break-in at a Lorain, Ohio furniture store, and in 1966, he was arrested in Cleveland, Ohio, for assault and battery after beating a woman.
Jeez.
Okay, so now he's...
Escalating.
Okay, so you figure he was born, 1940, By the time he's in his 20s, he's beating women, okay? Now, moving forward to 1970, Samuel Little's first murder victim was Mary Brosley. Now, she was an alcoholic that was estranged from her family. Mary met Samuel at a bar in North Miami Beach, Florida, on New Year's Eve. This was about 6 months before meeting Little, though. Mary's family had reported her missing in Massachusetts. Brosley had left her son when he was 7 years old without telling anyone she was leaving. Mary's sister had told detectives that Mary was a severe alcoholic, and the night before she was reported missing, police had actually found Mary walking along the highway at night, where she told police 2 men had pushed her out of a moving vehicle in Palmer, Massachusetts, and that her shoulder was hurt. She was supposed to take a bus back to Boston the next day, where she lived with her parents, but she never came home. Mary Brosley had a hard life, with illnesses and alcoholism. And then 6 months later, Mary made her way to Miami, where she would ultimately face her murderer, Samuel Little. Sam drove Mary out to a secluded area, where after he played with this chain necklace that she had, she was wearing on her neck. I guess this was his foreplay, He would just kind of if a woman had a necklace on, he'd kind of play with it and, pull on it a little bit or whatever. And then he ended up strangling her. Mary was found in a shallow grave in a wooded area of Miami on January 24th, 1971, and was decomposed to the degree that she was unrecognizable.
So she'd been there for some time.
She had definitely been there for some time. Here's the thing about Sam Little, though. This is what allowed him to commit so many murders without getting caught, is that he targeted women that he thought no one would look for if they came up missing. And here we go again. He targeted mostly sex workers, women who were, addicted to drugs, very vulnerable, and in high crime areas.
Which is
such a pattern with these guys, because this is how they feel like these women are not going to get missed. These women, nobody's going to care. But
unfortunately, there's truth to that. That is why you hear of so many women going missing and never being found, is because they are a target, and men too, not just women.
Right. Now, on September the 11th, 1976, this is before the digital age of cell phones and DNA technology, the Sunset Hills Police Department responded to a 911 call that a woman later identified as Pamela K. Smith was banging on the door of a house crying for help. Now, her clothes were missing, her hands were tied behind her back with an electrical cord, and Pamela told police that a man had choked her from behind with an electrical cord, forcing her into his car, where he then beat her unconscious. Afterward, she said the man had driven to Sunset Hills and raped her before she managed to escape. Get this, though. The police found Samuel sitting. He was actually sitting in his car near the Sunset Hills home that she ran to and banged on the door for help. Pamela Smith's jewelry and clothes were inside of his car. He's sitting near where she was.
Well, he's probably just so used to getting caught at this point. He probably just didn't.
He's
just like, whatever.
Or he knew he could get out of it. Which one is it, right? So, of course, Samuel denied raping Pamela, and he said he only beat her, and get this, he only served 3 months in the St. Louis County Jail for intent to ravish rape, basically meaning to overcome by force. And it's believed that Sam was able to plead a lighter sentence because Pamela was a heroin addict,
of course,
which made her an unreliable witness.
Exactly what happened with the Robert Pickton case, too, was people were unreliable because they were on drugs, which addiction is addiction, but if somebody said something happened, then
it happened.
Yeah.
So think about it. Sam is a loner. He's got no permanent address. He's going state to state, and he was arrested or suspected for multiple attacks over the next decade. But without the technology of DNA, the fact that Sam knew the system, it allowed him to continue targeting the type of females that he did, so that basically even if they did escape and he was caught, then hey, what's 3 months in jail, right? Sam used the fact that the women who became his victims of rape were sex workers. So this gave Sam the opportunity to claim that they accepted money for sex and that the beatings were due to a dispute over consensual sex. The transaction. Mm-hmm. So because of this, it would sow doubt in the mind of jurors, right? Mm-hmm. Therefore, not so sure we could, convict this guy without a reasonable doubt. They would plea deal, and Sam would walk.
Wow.
Now, we're going to move to 1982. Sam was arrested for shoplifting in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where police realized he matched the description of a suspect in the death of Melinda Rose Lepre, known to others as Mindy. Melinda had moved to Pascagoula, with her boyfriend from Florida, and he was living with her at the King William Motel. Melinda had begun working as a sex worker in Carver Village, which is a rough part of town. There was a fellow sex worker that told police that night of Melinda's disappearance. Then a man in a T-shirt and khaki pants pulled up in a beige station wagon and asked her for a $20 date. Well, after she turned him down, she stated that the man pointed to a gathering of other sex workers, I guess, that were there on the street, in a little group, and said, "They're the type to rip off a man. I'm going to kill them if I can get them." Well, my God, he was brazen. Really bold just to come out and say things like that. Well, she warned the other women to stay away from the guy in the beige station wagon, but she soon saw Melinda climb into the car. A landscaper found 22-year-old Melinda's naked body near a cemetery in Pascagoula, Mississippi. 22 years old.
Jeez.
Gee, exactly. Sam was actually charged with her murder, but get this. The grand jury declined to indict him. Instead, he was extradited to Gainesville, Florida, to face charges for the rape and murder of Patricia Mount. So, they've got this guy tied in one way, or suspect this guy in one way or another, to more than one or two murders now, right? But according to the Washington Post, a Pascagoula police lieutenant who works on cold cases, his name is Darren Versiga, Visiga, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. He said that the race and profession of victims no doubt played a part. If you were an African American female and or were involved in prostitution or had something to do with illegal stuff, whatever, we just did not treat those crimes as crimes, to be perfectly honest with you. Wow. That is a confession.
What a statement.
From a police lieutenant.
What a statement.
However, to note, Melinda Lepre was Caucasian. So Sam Little murdered women of any race, any color, and he didn't have any kind of particular age group that he
As long as they
chose.
had the right neck.
Exactly. It was all about what their neck looked like. Makes you want to wear a turtleneck all the time, doesn't it?
It's just a weird thing to me to pick somebody out by their neck.
Yeah.
Their neck. Normally it's like eyes or facial features or their body, but the neck, it's boring. It's just a neck.
Yeah. It's like my neck, my back. It's a neck. So if you put your I had to. I couldn't help it.
I know you did. You're so proud of yourself.
I really am. Well, unable to tie Sam directly to Melinda's murder, they shipped him off to Gainesville, Florida, where just a few days before Melinda was actually murdered, Patricia Ann Mount was last seen alive at May's Lounge, which was a Gainesville bar that she was a regular. Sam Little was at this bar on September 11th, claiming to be in town from San Diego for a football game between Florida and California. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Patricia was a mentally disabled woman, and according to witnesses, Sam just kind of met up with her there and just whisked her away in a station wagon. Patricia's body was actually found in a field, naked and bruised, the next morning. And guess what? In 1974, Sam was tried for the murder of Patricia Mount, and the jury only deliberated for guess how long?
I'm sure it was quick, yeah.
Less than a half an hour.
Wow.
And they acquitted him of
why?
all
What are the reasons
charges.
why they acquitted him?
Think about it. There's no one to really say anything other than he was last seen with her. I mean, there was just not enough evidence.
But how many times can this guy go to the court, be faced with murder, and then say, well, not enough evidence. See you later, bud.
That is the $1 million question.
See you at the next victim. I mean, it's...
Now you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It is infuriating that how much our system failed these women. How much the system continues to fail these women for 35 years. 35 years. So there were other women who actually testified that Sam tried to kill them. One woman, again, who was a sex worker, testified that Samuel put his arm around her throat and pulled her into his car, tied her up, and began choking her, eventually pushing her out of the vehicle into some trash. And about a month later, the San Diego Police Department found a woman unconscious and bleeding, guess where? In his car. Now, this is when Sam was charged with false imprisonment and felonious assault. And guess what? He only served 2.5 years in prison for that. So he got off on murder charges for these other women, right?
Right, repeatedly. And then gets sent to prison for
2.5 years for false imprisonment and assault.
It's almost like he did it to go to jail.
It's so weird. Yeah, you would think. So you see, even though authorities, and I believe that these authorities were taking these cases seriously.
Were they though?
Well, there were some. Let's put it to you this way: when you start getting into the California area, I think that these folks really started taking a look at this guy and seeing what they could do. So they were actually reaching out and hiring analysts to testify at the trials. They were retaining assistance from other states, from their peers. And whether it was real or perceived problems with witnesses, prosecutors would accept plea deals. And here's the system. Prosecutors would accept plea deals on lesser charges with shorter sentences, leaving Sam to continue raping and murdering, again, for 35 years. Now, Gary Rempel, he was the one who handled the case for San Diego County, called the FBI in 1985. And he asked that Sam Little be added to their nationwide crime profile. Okay? In a typewritten summary of the case he prepared, Kenny Mack, which is a Florida sheriff's investigator, was aware of Sam Little's connection to several murders in the South. And he also tagged the FBI in the mid-1980s. However, neither one heard back from the FBI. FBI officials claim that VICAP, which is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, that was specifically which is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program that was specifically designed to identify serial killers and rapists, only first became aware of Sam Little in April of 2013. Things that make you go, right?
Right.
Think about that. 1985, these guys tagged Sam Little. 1985. They wrote the FBI about this guy, and they said they hadn't heard of him until 2013? Yeah. Okay. So it really starts to get your blood boiling here, because he just keeps on going. This guy was a career killer. I mean, he really knew his stuff, knew what to do, and it's like system. He lived to kill these women. It's like his life's purpose. Now, in July of 1987, a month after his release from prison for the San Diego offenses, Sam moved up to Los Angeles. And it didn't take long for him to begin to murder again.
Right.
Carol Alford, who sometimes worked as a sex worker, was found dead at the age of 41 on July the 13th, 1987. Carol was naked from the waist down, wearing only one sock. Now, there were drag marks near her body, so police believed she was killed somewhere else and dumped in the alley behind a residence on East 27th Street. Carol had multiple injuries indicating she was hit in the head. She had multiple bruises around her jawline and hemorrhages in and around her eyes, with scratches and abrasions to her neck, and strangled to death. The toxicology report showed that Carol had consumed alcohol and cocaine before her death. Mm-hmm. All right, now a month later, on August 14th, and we're rolling with these, right? This was in 1989, at the age of 35, Audrey Ellen Nelson, originally from Cambridge, New York, was murdered. Audrey had studied cosmetology at a young age, but her life took a wrong turn and she left home, was forced into prostitution at the age of 19. So again, this pattern of sex workers and folks with, issues with drugs and so forth. Audrey had moved to California, and as she was getting her life back on track, she unfortunately, became yet another victim of Sam Little. The following month, Sam Little murders Guadalupe Apadca. 46-year-old Guadalupe's body was actually found inside a South Los Angeles commercial garage on September 3rd, 1989. Now, Sam Little also killed Audrey Everett Nelson in August of 1989. So he basically killed, Audrey, and he killed Guadalupe, and, it was just like boom, boom, boom.
He doesn't even have a ramp season. He just started out with...
Yeah. He just...
the only time he settles down is when he's in prison.
Yeah. He's just a steady kind of murderer,
Well...
Now,
at least he's consistent.
He is definitely consistent. From 1990 to 2012, Sam continued to have encounters with the law, like ranging from DUIs, burglary, larceny, shoplifting, drug charges, and other various things. So it wasn't until 2012 that Los Angeles police detective Mitzi Roberts discovered that genetic information gathered from the Nelson and Apadca murders were actually a match to Sam Little's DNA, all right? Mm-hmm. And Sam was finally connected to the murders, all right? Detectives tracked Sam through his Social Security payments, and...
Of course he's on Social Security.
Yeah, of course he is.
Well, at this time, how old was he?
So
2012, he was born in the 1940s, right? Or 50s?
No, he was born in 1940.
So, yeah, right. He's old enough to have Social Security.
Yeah, exactly.
Good Lord.
All right, so...
let's just pay for a murderer.
Yeah, right? Just go ahead and take care of him and everything. So they just tracked him to, through those payments to Louisville, Kentucky. So we're actually paying for this guy to get...
murder people.
Yeah, you might as well say, you know. Let's go ahead and support him. The U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force found and arrested Sam Little at a homeless shelter.
Wait, not to mention... you didn't mention anything about him working, and he's in and out of the prison system so much. How in the hell is he pulling Social Security?
Okay. I'm not really sure how that works unless it's just, hey, he's old. And, yeah, he can, maybe it was disability Social Security. Who knows? I'm not really sure. That's something I definitely got to look into. But he actually ran around with this woman that helped him do shoplifting and things like that. And I actually had some information on her, and I just kind of took that out of it because, it really didn't lend to all the stuff that he really did. It was just a situation where he befriended this lady, and she was a lot older than him. I think she was more like a mother figure to him, actually.
Apparently she didn't have a good-looking neck.
Luckily for her, right? So once they found him at this homeless shelter in Louisville, he was actually extradited to California on an outstanding narcotics warrant. Right? That November, Sam's DNA was matched to Alfred's killing. Sam was charged with 3 counts of murder in January of 2013. In an hour and 15-minute interview with the LA detectives, Sam spoke very openly about his past and his time in the California penitentiary. He was claiming to be this middleweight prize fighter. And again, this is Sam's MO, of how he would beat his victims before raping and choking them. He basically, I was a prize fighter in prison, so, I picked these women, and, I'd knock them out with one punch, and then I'd rape and choke them.
He's just real proud of himself.
You would not believe in the interviews that you can hear, actually get online and listen to this guy, his confessions. Mm-hmm. And if you watch the video, you will see just how freaking proud he is of himself. Wow. He smiles, he chuckles, he relives these murders, and he actually, in some of the reports, when he's talking about the actual murdering part, when he puts his hands around their throat to kill them, that he's actually touching himself under the tables. And this detective that was questioning him, he definitely sat across the table for a reason. This guy, he's just too much.
Yeah.
So finally, Sam Little's decades of murder was coming to an end. As authorities began to suspect Sam of even more murders across the country, Sam remained very uncooperative until 2018, where he eventually admitted involvement in, hold on to this, 93 murders from 1970 to 2005. 1970 to 2005.
Gosh.
Think about that. 93. Sam pleaded guilty to murdering 5 women in Texas and Ohio, resulting in additional life sentences.
Right.
Okay? Now, with that confession, authorities were able to link Sam to an existing Jane Doe case, as well as the killings of Mary Jo Payton and Frances Campbell, both killed back in 1984. Mm-hmm. Now, no one would have even known the scope of Sam's crimes had it not been for this Texas Ranger, James Holland. In 2018, with 700 hours of interviews, James Holland successfully coaxed now 80-year-old Sam Little into confessions that enabled for investigators to solve dozens of cold cases across the country. Sam Little confessed to 93 murders. This is more than Ted Bundy, the Green River Killer, or John Wayne Gacy combined.
Wow.
All right? There is so much more detailed information about Sam Little's, like I said, career of murder. You can go on YouTube, Netflix, or one of our favorite places, and I'll talk about this, is Audible. With Audible, you can also listen to bestseller books, Audible originals, and popular podcasts like The Rage Room. The great thing about Audible is that you can listen wherever you are or wherever you go and never lose your place. Sign into Audible for your 30-day free trial and get any bestseller or new release, and they're yours to keep. Just click on that link down in the description box and sign up, listen, learn, and be entertained with Audible. All right?
And the Rage Room.
And the Rage Room.
The Rage Room's on there, too.
Exactly.
In case you were wondering, the Rage Room
is
on that platform.
He's on it, too.
It is.
Okay.
All my ASMR lovers, the Rage Room.
ASMR lovers, okay. So one of the things that, that Sam Little did, now this guy was really super talented. I mean, he was a boxer, he was...
He's a legend in his own mind.
He really is.
Really. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
But this guy also sketched photos of his victims.
He's an artist, too.
Yeah. And those can also be viewed online as well. Okay?
I will put them on the YouTube video.
Yeah, for sure. I want to play, just to give you all the scope of this guy's arrogance. I don't know if it's arrogance, if it's...
He's just proud of himself.
He's just so proud of himself and so happy with what he did. And it took a long time for authorities to even get this guy to start talking. But, this Texas Ranger and these other detectives who finally got this guy to talk, they really knew how to kind of build him up and schmooze him up.
Didn't they start out with sports?
Yeah,
I think they started out with
because
sports.
He was a real big fan of Cleveland, because he lived up in that area, grew up through there.
Murdered in the area.
And murdered in the area, of course. So you got to, hey, what's my favorite sports team? Well, the place I started murdering people. That was, that's how you pick your sports team.
Life goals, people.
Right, life goals, absolutely. So I want to play this audio for you.
James Young, the Texas Rangers, interviewing Samuel Little, the Palmdale Prison Unit, California Bureau of Corrections, Thursday, May 17th, 2018 at 10:21 a.m.
When do you think is the first time you had a killing? 1970. 1970. You remember the first one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hear him laugh?
She evidently wanted this to happen,
So how long after the first one before you did the second one?
I don't want to.
So you're going pretty quick.
Yeah, man.
Did you kill her? What happened?
Same procedure. I kissed her. Everything I kissed her on. I said, what you could do if I sang with you? And much I could do. You did that, but bless her heart.
Bless her heart. Wow.
Yeah. And then he mocked her like, well, what would you do if I start to, well, there's not much I could do. I mean, there are other, and so many other.
There's a ton of interviews.
Yeah.
A ton of interviews.
A ton of interviews. But the thing that really got me is how we started off the podcast, or started off the story, how, and I watched the video on this, and he would reach up to the wall next to the interview table, and he would act like he was plucking grapes off of a vine. Mm-hmm. And he would say, that's how I chose them, depending on what their neck looked like. And I would just go to one town and I'd say, oh, pluck me a grape here. And, how many grapes y'all got here? And it just, oh my God, this guy was just insane, evil. And like I said, there's so much more and so many different conversations that we could have that stem off of this, mm-hmm. like how the system failed these women. The way that women, just because they're addicted to heroin or drugs of any kind.
It's like it automatically puts them in a category of prey.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that they're sex workers, that they're not credible. That they're not listened to, that police, ignore them when they try to say, hey, this guy tried to kill me. And how their testimonies won't hold up in court and leave these men, these evil serial killer sickos, whatever you want to call them, to continue to kill others, multiples, and up to 93. 93. This case could last another 2 or 3 hours. In all honesty, I could have gone on and on and on with this case because there's so much information.
Well, and there's no way you can cover all 93 victims.
There was just no way. But if you want to dig into it, absolutely go on those platforms, YouTube, Spotify, anything that you can look up. You look up Samuel Little, I guarantee you his name's going to pop up all over any kind of platform. So again, to end Mr. Little, he actually died on December the 30th, 2020. Just 2 years ago, folks, in a Los Angeles County hospital. And I can't really say that really makes me all that sad.
No.
Like I said, we just took this guy and let him just dump these women's bodies in obscure places, and murder these women, and let him do this for 35 years. And it is not all because the system failed. I mean, there was some DNA stuff. We didn't have that technology and all.
Yeah, but, this guy's record was ridiculously long.
Mm-hmm.
From theft to robbery, theft, same thing, to rape, to kidnapping. you would think eventually the cops were like, okay, you know, like hospitals have frequent flyers.
Right,
you
sure,
know,
yeah.
like, when did it ever come a point in the justice system where they're like, hey, this guy is a threat to society. We need to do everything that we can, whether to put him in an insane asylum, put him in the hospital, whatever it is, put him in jail. Mm-hmm. This guy should have been monitored from the get-go. The first time that he was, you know, repeatedly recurring in criminal activity. And I can't help but also think, you remember the, I don't know if they had that kind of stuff when you were in school, but do you remember the DARE program?
Yeah.
Don't do drugs, kids, kind of thing. It's everything that just keeps replaying in my mind is like, don't do drugs because you could end up being a victim of a mass murderer, because these are the type of people that they look for, that they narrow in on it, the people that are estranged from their families, they don't have connections, they travel a lot, and like he said, he picks them out like a grape, and nobody questions it.
Exactly. And remember this, though. Remember back when I was saying that these two guys, you know, Kenny Mack from the Florida Sheriff's Department, and the other detective I was speaking about, how they actually, I think his name was Gary Rempel. That's it. Yeah, Gary Rempel, and they both tagged the FBI, you know, and told the FBI, look, we need to put this guy in this, you know, in VICAP program, you know, so because we really think this guy is murdering people. You know, he's a killer, he's a rapist, and all of that.
Basically flag him.
And yeah, flag this guy. Come on. Let's, you know, keep up with this guy, keep tabs on him, do whatever we need to do. And the FBI said they never heard of him until, what did I say, 2013? Think about that.
How many victims?
How many victims between 1985 and 2013?
Well, same thing with the Gone Girl case that we talked about with, you know, them, when things started finally turning up and they called the FBI and they're like, well, we didn't say that. That was Vallejo police that said that. Like, immediately, they don't want to take credit.
Right.
You know, but when there's a big case, which this could have been a huge case for the FBI.
Yeah.
And
wow,
nothing even come up till 2013. And then 7 years later, he dies in a hospital.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great guy.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, big case. Wish that there was a lot more time. You know, I mean, we could go into this case and probably do 3, 4, 5 different podcasts on it.
True.
But,
and I also wanted to note that I did, I was kind of in and out when you were watching an interview with him on TV, where the pictures that he drew of these women, the sketches and the art, you know, work that he does of these women, he often depicted them with asphyxiation marks.
Yeah.
Say that 10 times.
Yeah.
Asphyxiation marks, where their eyes were
hemorrhaging.
And hemorrhaging.
Yeah, that was
broken
weird.
blood vessels on their face, and like, so you know that he definitely saw that, and that it is burnt in his brain as a trophy. So much to the point where he even drew them that way. Not the way that he saw them when he so much as picked them up as a grape or plucked them as a grape, but literally drew them after an asphyxiation.
You know, there was part of some of his interviews too, where he had talked about, you know, certain women that he killed. There was one that he actually did not kill through strangulation.
He drowned
her. He drowned her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He talked very fondly of how, oh, I loved her. And he would describe her, what she looked like. He said, yeah, I grabbed her by the legs or by the feet, and I dragged her into the water. And, you know, he would actually, you could see him, his face, he would look up as if he was reminiscing good times.
Like a kid going to Disney World.
Yeah.
Or a candy store.
What a thrill it was, you know, and almost like he loved these women, and that's, you know.
That's another thing that's so
weird.
twisted. Like, how can you murder somebody? And in such a violent way, too. Asphyxiation is not, strangulation is
not pretty.
awful. It's not pretty. it is, but I have also read that men prefer to do that because they like to watch the life go out of their eyes. It's a control thing.
Yeah.
It's a power thing.
And that's something else that he would do too, since you mentioned that. One of the things that I know that Sam had actually done, I know with at least one of his victims, I'm sure many of the other ones, he would actually begin to choke them, and as they started to choke out, he would release their neck.
Play with them.
And watch them kind of get a breath and come back so he could look at the fear in their eyes. And then he'd press down and finish it up.
Yeah.
Now that
It's
is
sick.
some warped stuff, man.
Yeah.
So,
is.
we could go on and on and on, but
Yeah. It's a big case, and like I said, if Karen takes over, it's gonna be
I just
a big
fall
case.
into those, right?
Yeah. So that is Samuel Little.
Yeah, a lot darker this week, folks, than last week's. Oh, there goes Cody shaking his ears.
He says every time we get close to being done with this podcast, he ends up shaking like, "Okay, I'm done."
Yeah, he's like, "Okay, I won't
Wrap it
go
up,
out
guys.
now."
Wrap it up.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, now he's going to drink some water. So, anyway.
But yes, it's definitely a lot darker than. But yes, it's definitely a lot darker than last week's World's Dumbest Criminals, which was.
It was so much fun.
It was fun.
It was good to
It was
laugh.
a nice break. Yeah, and it was a short little episode, but it was fun.
And again, guys, if you want us to cover any particular case, I mean, we don't always have to do the high-profile cases, the ones that you see all over, the newspapers and the
Other people have covered.
Yeah, and that everybody else has covered. Mm-hmm. We would love to actually dig into some cases that none of us have ever heard of, things that don't make, mainstream media. I know there's a few cases back where we came from that, were popular back when they happened, and then no one ever talked about it again. And there was not a lot of information. It was just kind of forgotten, you know. I would love to bring up some of those things. So, again, if you've got something, any advice, any cases you want us to do, any comments, suggestions, go ahead and send us those comments. We welcome them.
And stay tuned for next week. We will be doing another local Ohio, Kentucky case that I have been working on.
I didn't know you were doing that.
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So, fair warning, guys. The next couple weeks might be rocky. Got some crazy schedules going on. So, I will always post on the Rage Room on Facebook. So, if you follow, check out for updates. If the podcast is going to skip a week, release early, release late, whichever. Make sure you follow the Rage Room on Facebook, and if you follow me on my personal Facebook, I will no longer be posting stuff about the Rage Room. I'm going to strictly go over to the Rage Room. So follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And as always, we will see you next week.
See ya.